When you wake up today is when you make the change. I wasn't born enlightened. I fell in every hole there's out there. When I crawled out of the hole, I said, that hurt. I'm not going back in that same hole. All of us are perfectionists. If you're always waiting for it to be perfect, it's never out in the world. And my race car is out winning the race while your race car is in the garage working towards perfect. And the foundation is documented systems that are repeatable, that are trained on, and that the staff has with them. If you don't have this box org chart today, even if it's just you and your wife or you and your significant other, you are forcing yourself to be small. You know, you start where you are. All my past failures and all the things that happened that aren't right, and now I have no money and I have this stuff, or people don't, what all of it is. When you wake up today is when you make the change. I said, I wasn't born enlightened. I fell in every hole there's out there. And the only credit I give myself is when I crawled out of the hole, I said, that hurt. And I dusted myself off and said, I'm not going back in that same hole. I'm going to fix this because there's a lot more holes ahead that I need to avoid. And that's really where my big momentum came in.
That's fantastic. I want to start there if that's okay with you.
Yeah, anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, because something tells me that this concept you just laid out in 22 seconds or whatever it was is a simple concept, but it's not easy. And I can tell you that, by observing and experiencing myself, for most people, it is not an easy thing to do. So let's start there. What?
See how skinny this book is?
Yeah.
When I had Helena help me put this back together, I think it was 2016, I have 20 times more information than this, at least. The trick is not to make it big, fat, and complicated. The trick is to make it simple, and you can revisit it over and over and over again and get the foundation in. And that's where it goes south.
Why does it go south?
Talk about everything you don't know. All of us are perfectionists. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we wouldn't have reached where we are. But there's a double edge to that. If you're always waiting for it to be perfect, it's never out in the world. And my race car is out winning the race while your race car is in the garage working towards perfect.
So at what point, how perfect do you have to be before you start? Is it a 50%, 60%, 80%?
For me, it was, and I talked about having great mentors in my life. One of the very big ones was Dan Holohan, who was an industry giant. I was lucky that he actually used to ride in my truck with me. And, every one of his seminars were always sold out. And so became good friends. And, really what he just focused on is that this perfection of mine was dampening everyone else. It also causes us, why don't we delegate? We've read 1 million times we should delegate. The reason is, if you ask us who's best for any job at your company, your hand goes up. And I understand it, because the way we emerge to the top, in most cases now, I'm grew up in the business. I was 8 years old and I was at work. And I was third generation at our plumbing, heating, cooling, electric company, which did residential, commercial, and industrial. My friend Ellen Rohr, who's enormously known in the business, is great. She was a best friend. She still is. But we also co-consulted. We also opened up a Zoom Drain franchise that went nationwide. Is that she called me. She goes, well, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. And I go, yes, I was. But mine was covered with fuel oil because that was the business we were in. Having said that, everything was my father's philosophy. He didn't go to business school or anything. And he and my uncle, they literally built this out of my grandfather's gas station. It was 1936. And then they went off to fight World War II. And then they came back and really got back the business rolling. And my brothers and I didn't show up to the late 70s, early 80s when we came in the third generation. And the good news, like I said, is today it's on to the fourth generation. My nephew is there with my middle brother. But that takes systems. And it's not just people. And one of the biggest myths, because we're talking about what nobody tells you, is all of you, like me, because I was not born enlightened. I used to think, well, I know I have to grow this business. And the best way I can do that is, spend a ton of money, grow this business, steal other people's help. And those people will all come in here and fix this business that's broken and make us money. And I'm here to tell you, not likely. No, not likely. Because it's failed everywhere that, not only my company, but it failed everywhere that I worked, which is now 23 years in my second career. My first career was officially 26 years, and that didn't count all the time I was working in high school and in college and all. I'm just talking about when I officially became part of the business. So this is the myth. Really what it took for us to turn the corner in the most positive way possible was to create a foundation under our business. And the foundation is documented systems that are repeatable, that are trained on, and that the staff has a WIFM, what's in it for me, for following along in those things. So the funny part about this to me, Josh, is we're contractors. So when I would come in and somebody wanted to talk about their, fancy new master bathroom they wanted to build on the third floor, and then I would show up and I go, great, I need to start downstairs in the basement. She'd go, well, it's the master bathroom's going to be on the third floor. I go, well, if it can't support it downstairs, it doesn't matter what you do upstairs. And so we as business people are busy thinking about our penthouse of our company, and we haven't put in a foundation. So there are two types of companies out there that I ever worked with for all these years. There were small family usually, or friends who acted like family, and they got together, they worked really hard, and they grew to a certain point. But what happened to them is what happens to all of us. They run out of hours in a day, days in a week, weeks in a month. They just can't clone themselves. So that's a problem. They don't feel comfortable delegating anything to anyone because their perfectionism and the way that they delegate is so horrible. And how do I know? Because I didn't delegate at the beginning, Josh. I dumped stuff on people. And I watched the great Tommy Mello, who you know because you're out here in Arizona, A1 Garage. He used to walk down the hallway and kind of just peek into rooms and talk to people about do this, do this, do this. And I hauled him back into the office. He goes, you think you delegated? He goes, yeah, I did. I go, no, you didn't. You just walked around dumping on people. Let me ask you, are you happy with their success rate of getting you done? He goes, no, I'm not. I hate it. Nobody here does it. I said, that's because you didn't delegate following a system, which is in writing. What is it you want done? What do they have for a reason, as to getting it done? What would seem like a success? If you want a certain time frame, how many meetings are you having with them to keep them on track? And then what is there with them? Do they get a bonus? Do they get a job promotion? What is it they get? And then you both sign off on it. And
let me stop you right there real quick. Let me stop you right there. I know what WIFM means, but for the audience, I want you to explain.
I thought I said what's in it for me, but yeah.
I think we just kind of we kind of glossed over it a little bit, but what's in it for me? It's the acronym for that, yes. Basically saying that whatever you do, especially with regard to systems and things like this, there has to be something in it to the person that you're delegating this stuff to. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. I'm glad you highlighted, because ultimately, where most of us as owners, especially if you're a baby boomer, is we grew up in an era when someone like an authority told you to do something, our job was to go get it done. We're not about questions or anything. And the last thing most of us were thinking about, what's in it for me with them. But as I worked with millennials and now the next generations that are coming through, baby boomers look at them and go, well, why don't they just do what I do? Well, that ship has sailed. It has sailed. I have worked with and built great millennials into top positions, starting from apprentice to junior tech to senior tech, to field supervisor, and all the way up to general manager in many cases. They won't do anything, your people, even if they're nodding their head like, But really, if you had a balloon over their head, it says, I don't really care. Why should I care? Because I don't. And so a breakthrough for me was years ago at my own company. I realized, and it was my dad, who was one of my greatest, if not the greatest mentor, said, Al, if you think because you said so, everyone's going to do it here in this union shop, you are late by 50 years because that ship is gone. He goes, they need to know why they're doing anything. He was brilliant in that way. So the millennials that I built across this country who were great, they want to know the why. Why am I doing it? So that's the general purpose. And then once I know the why, well, what's in it for me? And that is such a big point in anything that you want to do to better set up your company.
That's a really good. I got a bunch of questions surrounding that, but before we get to that, I kind of want to put a little context behind the importance of building systems, and I'm hoping that you might be able to paint a picture for us. You said that you're third generation now, moving into fourth generation in that business. What did it look like back in 1937 from a size standpoint when you said that it started to today? Like, what does that growth look like? Can you kind of give us an overview of that?
Well, for those of you who are watching this on camera or listening to me, I was not around in 1937, but I will tell you that it was a little gas station in a beachfront town. And so my dad told me about my granddad because he had already passed when I was born. And he said, his dad, my grandfather, he owned this gas station. And, if he felt like fishing, he was gone. And my father was anything like that. He was all about work and he really enjoyed it. And he loved working with people, which is a good thing. He loved talking to people, which is also good because he was phenomenal at sales. And so that's where the company, but what my company grew to when I was there, we were 17 million in sales, primarily in fuel oil heating. That was our first business. For those who don't live in the Northeast, think of propane, where we deliver the propane, we service the thing. That's the same thing for fuel oil heating. What I realized in the 90s was that our customers loved us and they wanted us to do like plumbing and air conditioning and things of that nature. And we said, no. And finally I turned to my brothers one day and I said, and by the way, these are my older brothers. I told them, and credit to them for listening to their snotty little young brother. I said, if we don't get into these trades, we are letting other people into our customer's basement and we're going to get locked out. So that's what was the driver to get into plumbing, gas heating, air conditioning, and finally electrical. That's really what motivated that way. So today, and I also realized fuel oil day was passing because at one point when I was there, we had 17 trucks. Now they're probably down to, 4 or 5 maybe running every day. So that's a dramatic change. And the money today comes primarily plumbing, heating, cooling, electric. And that's pretty much what we mastered. And really mastering it takes documented systems that I was speaking to. And I realized by reading the great book, and it's kind of funny to me because 30 years ago, both Dan Holohan, who I talked about, and Ellen Rohr, both said to me, because they saw me, I was 50 pounds heavier than this. To say I was eating my stress is the most. Now, we have really good food in New York City, but trust me, I was overindulging because I felt so much stress. And I wasn't sleeping at night, let's face it. Most contractors sleep at night. I had a phone next to me. We were literally a 24/7, 365. And people go, well, everybody is. No, you're not in the way we were. We literally had people in trucks in shifts, 7 to 4, 8 to 5, 10 to 7, 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. In the dead of winter, 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. People were working, not being on call. Follow.
Wow.
And we answered our phones 24/7. We were talk about a high pressure, never sleep, 24/7, 365. And with the nicest people that you could ever imagine in New York City and Long Island, who were extremely patient. And by the way, that's New York sarcasm for those who are thinking, what? Yes, that's New York sarcasm. So it was a high pressure, high stake. And even even the industrial we used to do, you had a dry cleaner who served back. If you people who are old enough to know that the airlines used to give you a pillow, a blanket, so they used to have to send a dry cleaner. And we served those dry cleaners, specialized. When that high pressure boiler system went down, they couldn't work. So there are 200 people in this factory and they have all their orders that they promised. you want to feel pressure to get that equipment back online? Trust me, I know what pressure is. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. So that 17 million in sales, is that today or was that when you joined?
That was back when I was there in the 90s. As to
What?
what they are today, I don't know. But here's what I can assure you, because people are very curious.
Yeah.
My brother and my nephew are killing it in the best way possible. No competition has closed the gap. If you think they do stuff exactly the way I did it the day I walked out the door in 2001, September 2001 was my last day there. Of course not. They
Right.
do some things as well as we used to do it because momentum, inertia works both ways, in good and bad. Some things they actually do better because I was the roadblock to innovation and things go on. And
Yeah.
some things they've done worse. I'm sure that's the case. But are they rock solid? Are they really, yeah, they are to
That's
this day.
awesome. Great. So I want to touch on that a little bit. Obviously, you've got experience working in a family business. A lot of times, especially in the trade industries, I find this to be common, right? It passes on from generation to generation. Now we're kind of in a period where maybe the next generation isn't as interested as at taking on that style of business or whatever than previous generations. But I guess my first question around family business is how, in that dynamic, do you navigate the perceived nepotism or family dynamic or drama or whatever could come with being in a family business? How do you navigate that for yourself and for your employees?
Well, I can tell you, I'll start back at the beginning, is when I came into the business, my dad, who was a really nice guy, not because he was my dad, he just was a really nice guy. He said, Al, I owe you an opportunity, not a guarantee. And so that's really important. And he also then went on to say, you're not starting at the top, you are starting at the bottom, and you're not reporting to me. Don't come back to me and tell me what these other people, because that's who you report to, and that's who's going to be your boss. And you've got to prove yourself. And frankly, you're going to be held to an unfair standard. And it was true. I had to do more, not less than everyone else. I had to be faster at what I was doing. I had to have less callbacks. That was just the nature of it. I remember talking the stories. Some of our drivers could take the truck and wrap it around a telephone pole. And, my dad and my uncle would say, don't do that again. And I would come back with a little scratch and they go, what's wrong with you? It's like, it's unfair. But for those who, there was the owner of New York Yankees, not the one today, it was George Steinbrenner. And that's really the line that I always go back to about this thing, nepotism, the rest of it. So a reporter was asking him, or was talking to him about, really your success comes from the shipbuilding business in Cleveland that your dad started. So he looks and he smiles and he goes, well, the first job I had was bailing out my bankrupt father's business to get back on track, to go off and do the things that I did. But here's what I knew as a son in a father's business. If I go off to wild success, it's only because of the head start he gave me. And if I do poorly, it's because I'm a screw up. and then you have to accept that as part of it. Having said that too, which is, and I was going to talk about this anyway, the org chart.
Yeah.
It's an org chart, box org chart, which shows all the boxes and the reporting order is essential for any business. But it is my belief it's 100 times more important in family business where the husband and wife are fighting with each other about whose job it is. Kids come in, people see them like promoted over them. There's a lot of different things. So one-to-one clients that had children coming in, I spent a lot of time talking about, listen, I've been that child and I also rose to bring the next generation up. And I know the do's and don'ts. So if you're interested, I'll share that with you. But everything we're doing is going to make it more sustainable for them to come on board. And if you want to exit and for them to ascend, it's a really good thing. So I was working with a great contractor. He's just done phenomenal in the Midwest. And so he had a big metal, wide open shop. And in that shop was his house. His home was built into it. And I said to him, I said, why is the home here? He goes, Al, if I didn't have the home in here, I'd never see my young kids. And he said, when I get big enough and grow, and that's what you're here for, and we get this under control, I'll go buy a house and we'll make that into an office or something. So one day I'm sitting there waiting for him to finish up something. I'm on the couch sitting with his two kids, and his son is like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old. And we're just chatting and carrying on. Life goes on. He and his wife come to me one day and they tell me, my son, who's now 17, he doesn't want to go to college. Can you talk him into it? And I go, no, I can't. Because I believe in the business. And that's not, I went to college. I'm not saying no, I have an engineering degree. I never practiced a day in my life. And I did work 6 months a year while I was going to college. Having said that, I can talk to him if you're with me, and I'll tell him the following thing. You're going to start at the bottom. You're going to report to everyone other than your parents. And if you can take it and succeed and work your way up, two things happen. People are not going to think it's because of nepotism alone that you've risen up. You can go, like my dad told me, I had to be able to do anything and everything that I ever asked anyone else to do. And I will tell you, Josh, when I was young, I didn't like that idea. But as I got older, I realized the wisdom of it. I actually built it into my speech when I would be recruiting and hiring because I did it. The hiring and recruiting I felt was so important. Even as big as we had gotten, we were 70 people, I would still do that because I felt it was that important. And one of the things I said to him is, you're in the right place if the following scenario is good to you. If I'm not going up a ladder in the dead of winter to work on a unit on the rooftop, you don't have to go. But if I'm going, you better be following me, or you should get up and leave right now. That was really kind of the thing. So the great story at the end of this thing is this kid just flew up the org chart, and to this day has just achieved it the best way possible. So does that kind of, but the org chart really is a big thing. I can tell you where the birth of the org chart is. This is a story. We have time to share.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We got plenty.
So we never had an org chart. Remember I told you we started out at a gas station in 1936. In around the early 1990s, we still didn't have an org chart because the essence of our father's message was hurry up, go do something, and the money will follow. And I'm here to tell you is most of the time, but not always, we never did a budget till I met Ellen and Nexstar and was involved to do actual budgeting. They would come in, our year was September for some quirky reason, it was the end of the year. So they'd come in the end of August and go, congratulations, you had a great year. Go buy something for yourselves, get some new trucks, do whatever you want to do. And we liked that. But the next year they'd walk in and go, wasn't as good a winter. We're not showing the profit we need to do. So all of you guys are not getting paid. Speaking, guys, me and my older brothers. So he said, I hope you have money in your bank account. That was a pretty miserable way. So my advocation to you and my wholehearted thing is the sooner you learn how to do real world budgeting. And yes, to this day, this book still has great traction. Ellen Rohr, R-O-H-R, Where Did the Money Go? Is the first book you read. And the second book you read after that in sequence is How Much Should I Charge? And that was really the first time we ever worked out a budget. Because, did I mention I'm not enlightened, Josh? I wasn't born enlightened.
Yeah, you said that a couple of times now.
Yeah, so I'm going to lean on that. Well, you're thinking, well, come on, how much? We used to buy a motor for $30. We used to pay you, Josh, $30. We used to charge $100 and figured, wow, we got $40 of free profit here. And it wasn't until we did our first budget in the early 1990s, and I'm sitting down doing the budgeting, and it comes out to $150 selling price, $150 an hour. So the first thing I figured out was how much would a toilet cost? And it came out to $400. And my brother Richie is over my shoulder and he goes, well, that can't be right. Do it again. So I did it again. And it came out to the same price. And I looked at him and I go, there's actually great relief here. because what it reinforces is not everybody is our customer. Because that was one of the myths that's always told, well, everyone can buy from us. And I'm here to tell you, no, not everyone is your customer. So we got much more dialed in on who our customer is, what makes them tick, how can we build the value for that. I actually became really good because I knew right away when we did this pricing was the three most problematic clients would be the biggest problem. Family members, friends, house of worship. So I worked out a little thing, and it would be basically like this. Josh, thank you for the opportunity to come to your home and for the work to do. Be aware, we may be higher than some other people, so you're entitled to know why. Our guys are trained and certified here, criminal background, drug tested. I'm not sending anybody to your house that's not that way. They will have a fully stocked truck. They have been trained by us in here, not at your house, learning how to do the job. They'll look around, make sure they don't miss anything. They will quote you a price before they begin. And when they do the work, they're going to bring you up to make sure you know how everything works. And they're going to ask you one question. Is everything clean enough for you? And if not, tell me right now, because it will be. If there's an issue, we'll be back, which is why we have a better warranty than anybody else out there. If that's important to you, we're the right company. And I actually built it into the marketing because it was so good. It was what we did and what I taught every customer is every company needs to know 10 reasons to choose you. So ours was, it doesn't matter who's coming to your house, Al, Tom, Frank, we all have one-of-a-kind operating manuals. We follow a system so we don't miss anything. Number two is we don't come to your house like all the other companies and learn their job here. We have a in-house training center, state-of-the-art, where we have practiced all of these skills, which is why, number three, we have the best warranty out there. And I would just literally go tracking down the list. Criminal background testing, drug testing, which today is more standard. But
Right.
think 1990s, this was totally ahead of everyone.
Wow. No, that's I really appreciate you just kind of going into the detail that you're going into, because I think that's what helps internalize and some of our audience and our listeners and our viewers, how they can implement this stuff into their business. I want to backtrack a little bit just to talk some more on the family side of things. So this is admittedly something that I'm experiencing as well. Obviously, my dad started my business, the Windy City Equipment, and then I came in about 5 years later. And one of the things I struggle with, Al, and this is a recent revelation, right? But one of the things I struggle with is kind of one of the things that you spoke to. And I want to unpack that a little bit for the audience in case anyone else has the same thing. But where does that being given the opportunity end and earning begin? Right. And when I say that, I mean, I was given this opportunity almost to the same extent, right? I owe you an opportunity, not a guarantee. Right. So kind of almost in that same realm. Well, and when I came into the business, we were doing $200,000 a year. Now we're on the cusp of somewhere around 12 million. So not huge,
Wow.
but
that's big to me.
Big jump, right? And so it's one of those things that I am eternally grateful for the opportunity that I was given, but where's the line between taking ownership over, what part of that was mine? Now, obviously I didn't do it alone. That's not what I'm saying, but where, understand what I'm asking?
I totally get what you're saying. And I've got two parts to this. One is that box org chart that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the way that it came about, speaking to family, my brother Marty was the inside guy. He never really worked in the field. And so he would show up about 6 a.m. And one day he was answering the phone and a lady was screaming at him about a no heat call. So he goes across the hallway and starts screaming and hollering at the service manager. So by the time I walk in at 6:30, the service manager is on top of the roof, almost ready to jump, literally. And my first job of the day is to walk them down back.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting at the dispatch desk at 6:30 because I used to like to set the day up as best I could. And I get a phone call from one of our suppliers. So background here is My dad told myself and my brothers while we were young boys, you always take care of your supplier first before you take care of yourself. Because push comes to shove, they'll take care of you, which is another brilliant thing he said was filed deep in my head because Hurricane Sandy showed up and wiped out our whole service area of Long Island. And our vendors were champs. We lost 20 trucks. Enterprise took care of us. We had stuff piled to the ceiling because our vendors really understood that we were partners versus when I had grown up, which was adversarial. It's not like I have to wrestle with you about price. We had really worked hard for this to be mutually beneficial. So anyway, he says, well, Al, you overlooked the bill, and I understand it's busy. I'm sure he'll come up. I go, okay, no problem. And I race across the office to the accounts payable person, and I start screaming and yelling at them. And now Marty's job was to walk that person off the roof. And we are standing between departments in the hallway where everyone can hear this. And I look at Marty and go, if you don't like the way the service is being done, you tell me and I'll fix it. And he looks at me and he goes, well, if you don't like the way the bills are being paid, you tell me and I'll fix it. And we just looked at each other and go, that's really good. We should actually kind of document that. So it was there. The org chart. But the point of this is, everybody thinks people go, well, when I get bigger, I'll get an org chart. And here's what I want to say, because we are here, everything they don't tell you. If you don't have this box org chart today, even if it's just you and your wife or you and your significant other, you are forcing yourself to be small. But the truth is, you're running around all day long filling all these boxes. And that's particularly normal. And if you ever want to be able to hand these boxes off, you need to know what the boxes are and what goes on in the boxes, which swings back to you, Josh. How do I know that you're filling that? Because you're handling the 80% of what goes on in those boxes. And the 4 to 5 KPIs, and KPIs are known performance indicators. Not 400, not 500. Don't tell me about this NASA Space Center thing that you have with 100 screens, because it just drives me crazy. 4 to 5 KPIs for every box that moves the needle in the right direction. So does that help a little bit to what you were speaking to?
No, it does. It does. No, I appreciate that, and the expansion on the org chart too. I think even more clarification is incredible there. I also had a question when we were talking about delegation, and this kind of ties in with the org chart too, being able to actually identify that and delegate those tasks. The way that I've always worked is kind of like you, right? I would take everything on, and I would struggle to delegate it. But once I understood that like it was necessary, when I started to not be able to fulfill my duties because I just had so much on my plate, it almost like would birth another one of those boxes, right, in the org chart. And but here's where I have struggled in the past, and I think that several entrepreneurs, builders, scalers out there are struggling too. What's in it for me? How do you convey that? What is in it for them, and how do you, how do you actually get them to, number one, understand that, and number two, believe you?
So for the people who are building the business, the people at the top is really what we're speaking to about now. You can't really be at the top. Oh, you can put your name in the box, but the dirty secret we all know is you're running around handling every box beneath you. But people ask me, oh, I don't know where my day goes. I know where your day goes because this is where it went me. Josh, got a minute?
Oh, yeah.
Josh, got a minute? And everyone is entitled to come to you because you didn't get the foundation in. The most important manuals are not at the top. They're at the bottom. Again, if you were building a home, you would start with a solid, strong foundation for the house you're building today, and it can handle the expansion to where you want to go. And that's really what it is everyone who sits along that top line, their job is to get everyone that reports to them following the manuals and the associated training that goes with it, because manuals are the backbone, the skeleton, if you will. And additional training, whether it's video or classroom training or side-by-sides, which is what you do in the office, or ride-alongs to augment that. that's really how you get them to own their box. In our particular case, we dramatically changed our business when it was actually my brother Richie and I were young men at the time. We go to a workshop, and the guy on the stage is saying the average age of the tech is going to be 55. And I think we were 30 at the time. And we go, oh, heavens, I cleaned it up. This is a mess. And we got busy building a hands-on training center so we could build our own people. And we were a union shop. And they would get out in the field, Josh. And then invariably a year or two later, Richie would be out in the field because he was the very best tech of all of us. And he would say to me, did you show him motor rotation? I go, of course I did. And then he would call up about some other thing. Didn't I show him about something or other? I go, Richie, they've been out of my training for a year or two. There's nothing to lean on. So that caused us to back up and create the manuals. And when we got done creating the manuals and we looked at the training center, we knew we had built it all wrong, which was crushing. But I built generations of training centers because the manuals inform what trades and tasks and things that you do so that you can build the right training center so that in tech's case, there's sales, operation, technical performer. Three things is how I judge a service tech. And here's where I'm going to train them on that. And the more I make it look like where they're going to work, the better it is, the higher level. And even installers have to be good at communication, operations, and technical. And this is, again, where I train them on this. And so that the change became, I read a book, Employer of Choice. And what I took away from this all those years ago was, if we can offer a career versus just a job, we win. And that just spread like wildfire in our company is, you can't stay an apprentice at our company, Josh. It's just a gateway in here. No matter how great an apprentice you are, your job is to earn your way to class. And we specifically spelled out how that is in our staffing program. You have to go to apprentice to junior tech. And all that really means is our trade manuals are this big. You're going to get trained on this much and volunteer to come through this training. And when you graduate, you get your own truck, you make more money, you go out and prove yourself. And when you prove yourself 6 months, a year, we'll bring you back and we'll teach you the rest of what we didn't teach you in junior tech to senior tech. Plus, we were having a brain drain at our company. We had 25 techs at that time. We had those shifts I talked about. Problem was nobody was in charge of a shift of 4 people. So everybody was like, what? So we created field supervisors, but then we just plucked them out of the air. And field supervisors, really, their job is to, the way you do it right, senior tech to field supervisor is they qualify, they compete, and whoever wins trains. So qualify, compete, and train. That takes all of these systems that I keep talking about to be able to do. Because otherwise, if you and I, Josh, were both field supervisors and somebody rides with us, I'm going to judge them on my opinion. And you're going to judge them on your opinion. And they're not going to be the same.
Sure.
So this is where it's really unfair. People ask me, how did you get this in at a New York City union shop? And I said, the reason it went through is I had taken a guy who was flipping pizzas, and I got him to be one of our, we had 5 install crews working every day. He became one of our best installers. And it's a while ago, so don't get upset. I slid the window open and I handed him out the job folder, which was paper at that time. And I go, read it over, make sure you know everything, because I can't get there at 10 o'clock. I'll get there around 2 o'clock. And he goes, oh, I got it. It's not a problem. I get to the house and I'm going around the basement where the heating system was put in. And I am muttering every 4-letter word that a New Yorker knows. And I said, come with me out to the truck. And I looked at him and I go, this is nothing like what I wanted. And he looks at me, he goes, your brother showed up, Richie, and said, do it this way. And for the first time in my life, I realized our company had no way of doing anything that was systemized. And I'm proud to say that I could go to a job today and know it's our job.
Yeah.
Even though the technology has changed, I just know our footprint. So when we got the manuals together, because they were sick of having 4 Levi's show up, plus managers, it wasn't just us. just coming in there from out of space and tell them, no, that's not what we want. And why? Because we couldn't read your mind. So he coined the phrase, do what's in the book, you're off the hook. Now, of course, today it's all on tablets and digital, but it's still the same thing. It's the same way. Your people are sick of you, them waking up one day thinking they're doing a good job, and then you just come in and say, no, that's not what I wanted. And based on what? And one step I want to go back, Josh, to is delegation is a very powerful tool in writing, done right, with everything I talk about. But it's not a replace for org charts and manuals that cover all the boxes and the trade system. Because you think you can delegate and delegate and delegate. You can't delegate everything. Otherwise, it's like this big white wall covered with Post-it notes. It's not how to do it. Delegation is for a one-off thing. We're going to pay you to get the model truck set up. We're going to delegate this and help get the warehouse back in shape, delegate this. As a matter of fact, speaking of sons, I work with a great guy up in Maine, and his son now wanted to enter the business at this point. And he goes, what do you think we should do? I go, well, your warehouse has become a mess, and we both know what it should be. We have the pictures documented. So I would give your son the chore and delegate this task to him, and we'll find out whether or not he's into it and spending the time to do it. And of course, he nailed it.
Yeah.
And started to put his career, because the whiff for him is, I want in.
Very cool. So what about the WIFM for the support staff, for people in accounting, for people in dispatch, for, when you're implementing these KPIs, you're delegating these duties, you've got these boxes, like you said at the very beginning of the episode, just like having the job isn't enough today, right? People have to know what's in it for them. So what's in it for them, and how do you convey that?
Well, I think they need to know the why, too, which is the bigger why, which is there are 2,000, what we used to share is there are 2,000 other companies out there, and no one is trained like we are. So we're actually out there protecting the public. We are plumbers that keep bad water from good water. We're heating guys that help houses be warm but not overheated. Cooling guys that help houses get cool but not over cold. And electrical, where the lights aren't blinking. This is why we do what we do. Now and I actually told these guys, I said, I want you to be as selfish as you can be, but then you have to tell me why that's good for a customer first. So I'm offering a career, not a job. And they went from apprentice to junior tech to senior tech to field supervisor. Some of them moved over to be big ticket salespeople. Some moved to sales manager. Some moved up to service manager. Guys at general manager. But even in the inside, CSRs, when you get bigger and you have more CSRs, you're going to need a lead CSR. And then if you get bigger than that, you're going to need a customer service manager. So there is this room in growth. And the same thing applies to dispatcher. There's a dispatcher, then a lead dispatcher, then, a dispatcher service manager. So there is growth in that area. No question about it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I want to check in and just make sure, do you need a break or anything? You want to take 5? We'll probably go for another half hour, 45 minutes if you got the time.
We are in Arizona, as you know. And so the only thing I really need is water, because I think the audience and I am still passionate about all of this.
Yeah, I can tell. I appreciate that, Al. If at any point you got to step away for a minute, just let me know. I know this long form stuff, Yeah,
I just wanted to talk a little bit, and I know we covered it earlier, but because we're talking about everything they don't tell you.
Yeah.
Don't think you're not smart enough. I'm going to tell you right now. And Ellen and I used to work together, and I'd be driving and she'd be sitting in the passenger seat. And one day she says to me, who would you say were some of our best clients who got the most success? And I didn't take my eyes off the road, and I go, most people would like me to say the very smartest of them. And you and I both know that's not true. And even though it's generalization, which is always a problem, the really smartest of them always had to make it harder than it was supposed to be. So she worked in Excels. She had a sheet that worked perfectly with ending in letter G for a row, but they wanted HIJKLM. And then what I had to explain to them is, if you stick with Ellen's foundation here, she can compare you with other shops, know how easily you're off track. But if you're bent on making this more complicated, so I had to come up with an analogy. You know you're out of shape, you know you haven't been really doing your exercise, and you realize, you know what, I've got to start running. So I think I'm going to join a marathon. So that's not a good idea. I tell you what, why don't we see if we can run a half a mile? Then why don't we see if we can run a mile? Why don't we enter a 5K? The point of this is clear, right? So that's the same for you. Wherever you are today, this is where we start. And don't believe the myth that you have to be this brilliant, person, because generally the success was for us. Clients said, Al, you're here to help move me where I want to go. So for me to tell you what I think should be, I will give my input, and I go, great, because I don't want you to sit in a chair and just sit down and I'll just tell you what to do. You need to know your why I'm telling you this, and what is it that you want to know and what you understand, because if you don't, there's no chance you can transmit that to the rest of the team. So owners also have a myth is, well, you know what? My managers will get this all done. And I'll go again with, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But more times than not, and there were only a couple in the 23 years of when I was doing one-to-one work where the owner didn't want to be involved and he wanted me to work with their managers. And every time we did that, it was a complete failure. And the reason was simple. We worked hard. We did these systems, got these all in place. The managers thought they had the buy-in of the owner. And then the owner comes out from behind the bushes and goes, who said this was okay? And that was it. It was gone. So the owner doesn't have to do the work of implementing all these systems, but they have to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And they have to know what's going on before they can just start to ease their way out, which is a good thing, so that the other people can rise up, but not just disappearing.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's another myth? We hear a lot about this this coined phrase, work-life balance. What's a myth about work-life balance that you've come to find?
Well, if you're not sick of hearing Ellen's name at this point, she used to love to give me books. And one day she gave me and my customer, Jim Carnegie, it was originally Zoom Drain in 2005, and it was really a mess. And he had 5 guys, couldn't get dressed right, trucks were messy, and he was from the Air Force, really neat and clean stuff. On day 1 that I'm there to do my first program called Planning Power, he says to me, Al, I would really like to franchise this company. And I slowly move my eyes from left to right, and I go back and I said, Jim, let's see if we can get them dressed right and here on time before we go franchise this. Well, turn the clock, 2011, they're already in a great place. Ellen's finished her time at Ben Franklin. And so we did do the franchise thing. So she gives Jim Carnegie and me the book 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah. And I read it. And then I called Jim up and I go, what do you think? He goes, this was the worst effing book I ever read in my entire life. He goes, I used to, and he actually said more about guys on the stage, that have succeeded. And we know there's a lot of great guys, but they get on the stage and they say, don't chase success and, spend more time with your family. And the two of us go, that's the end of the story. It's not the story where most of us are. Does that make sense? Mm. And so my story that I always share is that I was on vacation when I would be lucky enough to be on vacation, but I really wasn't on vacation because my phone was ringing all the time.
Yeah.
And so there, my wife and I, every 5-minute phone calls coming in. And after one vacation, I just looked at her and I go, I know we have 2 young girls and I'm not around a lot, but I'm going to be around less. So you ought to know why. I'm going to put all the systems in place. I'm going to get all these guys trained up from scratch instead of trying to rewire industry retreads. I'm going to take willing apprentices with no skills to willing techs with great skills. And I need 2 years. And she said, well, then do what you have to do, to her credit. And so we're on vacation. And I don't know why I picked 2 years, Josh, but I did. And 2 years later, we're on a beach and vacation's wrapping up. And I turn to her and I go, Natalie, did you notice anything? She goes, oh, yeah, your phone wasn't ringing all the time. It had come to pass. So this point about work-life balance, you have to work on the business. That's the great book, E-Myth, Changed My Life, Michael E. Gerber. And what I love is it was very big in the 90s, and now it's got a new life again today. It's very popular, and for a good reason. So what it told me, because my friends insisted I read it, remember I was 50 pounds heavier, it was, if you're always working in the business and never on it, nothing's going to change. And that was what I needed to hear. So now I knew why it didn't work. And what he then walked into the next thing, which is unless you have documented systems, then you really can't run your fancy hotel, which he talked about, or any business. So I had the why, and I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't have the how. But I'm really good at how. I hired my great industry friend, Dan Hollihan, because for years I was trying to sit at the keyboard and create my own manuals. And everything I wrote came out like a law book. Article 1-6.35. Try and get that down in New York City Union Shop or anybody. It was horrible. It wasn't worth the computer space that I was tying on.
1A, Roman numeral 2.
Yes. So I had to hire him, and we had to have all these meetings. We spent $150,000 in today's money for a fraction of what is now in my program today. And I didn't even know what I didn't know. But even with that, we paid it off within 2 years because we drove callbacks down, which is running back for unnecessary stuff, because that was always robbing us of new money. And we had way more calls than we could humanly do. It also will set up the stage so we could build our own pipeline of techs, which we did. And I'm happy to say the majority of my customers during COVID, when all of you guys were out there, I can't find great techs. Well, no kidding. They already had their own pipeline, and they were just riding along through COVID and every day because they found this is the path that you really have to go along. So when you talk about life balance, the story that I will then share again, and I've said it a number of times because it still affects me, and you probably can hear it in my voice because it still feels true to today. My oldest daughter, Pam, had a recital, and I always made it to every recital. I was the only dad in the back. Think of a camcorder because it was so long ago. But there was a parent-teacher conference, and Natalie goes, and teacher says that Pam says she could wish she could see her dad more. And Natalie goes ballistic. See her dad more? He's the only dad in the back of the room. There's no other dads back there. And once Natalie shared that with me, I was busted. I was so busted because I would run to there from a customer I had been at or a job that wasn't going right. And I'd be filming, but I wasn't thinking. I was never where my head was never over my feet. And I was thinking about where I had to go to next. And that was another driver for me to finally get control. And for those who are not sick yet, Dan also gave me the line that I'll never forget, which is either you get out in front of this or be prepared to be run over by it over and over again. So switching from being a firefighter to a fire preventer is what will change your life.
Very well said. Thank you. I'm noticing some associations here, with some of the things and some of the examples that you're getting, and what you first said when you came onto the show, when I asked you what you wanted people to take away. What you said was start where you are, right? And to me, that means a couple of things. That means there's no better time than right now. It means that now is the only time that does matter. It means lean into reality, right? As it is today. Don't dwell on the past. Don't dwell on the future. Just focus on today. So I want to unpack that a little bit. When you said that you told your wife you need 2 years, at what stage in your career were you already at when you said, I need 2 years to get this under control?
I showed up full time at 22, and I was probably about 35. So it was 13 years into it, because
Oh, wow.
I had been doing this, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, go
Yeah.
busy, grow it. Money was coming in, don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but it
It's
was
chaos.
really a very killing process, and say stressful again would be a minor thing. And didn't know what I didn't know. The information was out there, but it wasn't until my great mentors and friends opened my eyes. But I get the same thing, Josh. I did great work with a lot of guys, and they are extremely grateful. And so many of them said, "Oh, I wish you had been here like 5 years ago." And I look at them and go, "You weren't ready." Just like I wasn't ready. You being ready means when you are either sick of the pain. So don't run from your pain. Identify your pain right now. What are your pain points in your life? That if I told you we can fix them, you would do what you need to do. Or what is the gain out there that you really want? You want that family time. You want more money. You want success. Whatever it is you want, and be really clear. And all of this must be in writing. You can type it, but there is one thing that people miss, and it's not because of being old fashioned. There is a hand to brain connection. Science has proven this out for years. So writing it out, and then you can put it into wherever you want to, is really critical. But the writing of it, just like setting goals, have to be in writing. These are things that you need to know. I will share one of Ellen's great thing, everything they tell you should do. So many people have called me, and I've offered free 30s, and they tell me, Al, this has got to work. And Ellen used to say, no, it doesn't. You're going to just work yourself into an early health crisis, or you're going to drive your family into bankruptcy, or, or you're going to break your marriage up. So many things are going to happen. It doesn't have to work, but you can make it work. But at the same time, you better put a date on the calendar, in Outlook, Google Calendar, whether it really is or is not. Because we can't live in fantasy land forever.
I really like that. Where, Al, do
I
you
did have
draw
something I
the...
wanted to double back for a second, if I got a minute.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Yeah.
You asked me such a great question about personal life and work life and balance and the rest of it. Ellen and I teach, it was a time management class that actually it's in my program, my signature operating manual system and my signature staffing thing, because I know this is the biggest problem. I don't have time. And so the course that we put together is maybe 2 to 3 hours long. Out of 100 contractors who own the program, the big program that has this in it, Josh, how many of the 100 do you think actually go through the program?
I don't know.
10 out of 100.
Really?
Yeah. But they all, if you ask them, I don't have time. So it's all about time management. And one of the biggest things that I learned and got a lot of help with is if it's not on my calendar, and I work in Outlook, where I have blocked out the time and created these things, it's never going to happen. So when people buy my programs, I said, if you're not going to commit to 1 2-hour block, please don't buy any of these programs, because it's just going to be a nice idea that you never get done. But here's the other trick. You've got to put your personal time and events in there as well, or you're never going to get to your daughter's soccer game or whatever. And so your calendar and respecting that is really a big first step to getting this work-life balance.
It's amazing that you just said what you said, because my next question was literally going to be, where do you draw the line between choosing the business for your family or over your family? And I think you did a really good job of articulating that just now in delegation of time. So
Yeah, each of us we have different approaches. The point being is, I think that quality time versus what I was talking about before is showing up but not being there.
Just all in when you are there.
Yes, exactly. That's really, to me, the most important time. And I took that example from my dad. He worked just crazy hours. And as little boys, one of the fun things was our dad would wake us up and we would go with him to run a night call. Now, there were people on, but he had to go out to jobs periodically at night to a bakery that was down, or, a nursing home that needed to eat. Because these are life-saving things. These aren't just like, oh, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. And we as young boys just loved it. I couldn't understand why he wasn't quite as excited, because having worked all day and also at night. But when he would come home as a young boy, I thought to myself, it's really amazing, because he would ask us questions about how our day was. And he wasn't like, leave me alone, I need a beer. He was, and he had that right. He could have done that. But when he would be home, he was home for us. And we were the Brady Bunch before I even knew that was a term. My mom died early. I was under 4, and my older brothers and sisters. And then my stepmom, who really raised me, she was a widow and had an older brother and older sister. Her stepbrother came in. So we were together. So there was not just me competing for time, but there was 8 of us around the table. And if you could have just dropped in with a drone and heard the conversations, because as we grew up, it was like, we're talking about, the sports teams, and the next moment we're talking about a job we were just on, and then back to the sports team. It was just a crazy conversation around the table, but he prioritized it.
I love that answer. Kind of in the same realm, but not really. I'm curious. We were talking before the show about how you retired from your first business, or the PHCE business, at 48 with a 3-year runway, right? So you understood you were going to be retiring at 45. Gave 3 years
I gave
notice.
My brothers, for those listening, I gave my 2 older brothers and my dad 3 years notice.
3 years
and as
notice.
I was telling Josh, like, what do you get? 2 weeks from your guys? A week.
Yeah.
So, very different.
What made you retire at that age from that business?
Yeah, so I was good about saving. I never lived a full. I wanted to raise my kids in a middle class neighborhood, which I did. I wanted them to ride their bicycles on the street. We'd all come out in the summer, put our chairs out. That was really the environment I wanted to be in. But really, when the business became systematic, I don't want to say it got boring for me, because I found new challenges. But the reality is, as much as my brothers and my dad allowed me to do, and they let me do a ton, there were things that I wanted to do that they weren't approving of. And I was not going to drag them up a hill that they didn't want to go. And so I realized, I believe that the stuff that I had done with them in this shop would work at any contractor shop, anywhere I go. And I've been given a gift, and I fervently believe if you've been given a gift in life and mentors have come into your life, you have some level of obligation to give that gift back. Now, I got paid for it. Trust me, I could have made a lot more money staying where I was, but I'm not complaining. It was great. And I told Josh, it was also a great way to go fly around, see different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And really, places that I never would have got to. And also, I stayed married that way.
That's a hell of an accomplishment, being able to retire at that age. And I think that, that's something, especially when we talk about work-life balance, reality, leaning into reality, what freedom means to people, which is something we talk a lot about on the show as well. That can be one of the ways that people achieve that. Sounds like kind of what you were trying to work towards, whatever your definition of freedom was.
Yeah, I think for all of us, because you were mentioning even, there should be an exit plan, even if you don't think you're ever going to exit.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, the exit police aren't showing up at your door. I said, wait a second, you said you were going to exit. Today, no, it's just a plan. There should be some succession. And my dad was a forward thinker. And the longer we were there, the more he passed shares on to us that we would earn. And he was always that way. Actually, he was very progressive in that. Being progressive is different, of course. He had two-way radios in his truck when people were looking for, telephone booths, which of course
Yeah.
disappeared.
Yeah.
And we have Nextel. We've always been on the cutting edge of all of. We were computerized way before everyone else in our industry was, and so he really had that feature. So he said to us, "I brought you guys in not to just hear my mandates. I brought you in here because we need fresh blood. Having said that, we're pretty successful. All I ask is you tell me what you want to do, and I will give you my opinion. And once I have, you can proceed the way you want because I want you to be here. But at least you have heard my thing." And he was very fair, and that you could not ask for more than that, in my opinion.
Yeah. What about leadership, Al? We touched on systems, we touched on org charts and processes, and even a little bit on the personal realm, work-life balance. But where does leadership come into this? And I think that's a big piece that, especially in these industries that we're talking about, a lot of times it's a technician. They go out, they start a business, because it's what they know, but maybe leadership wasn't high up on their list of things to learn. What does that mean to you, and what does it look like?
Well, what you're speaking to me, and when you were talking, really is most of us that weren't born into the business. We were great techs. People liked us. And then we had an entrepreneurial seizure moment where we just freaked out and go, you know what? I can sell it for $5 less, get a white truck, and I'm going to make tons of money.
I can do it better.
I can do it better. Without realizing, what I talk about, which is the 7 powers, is planning, operations, staffing, sales coaching, marketing, and finance. That's the foundation. And as companies are huge, don't have that, that's a problem. And if you're small and you want to get bigger, it's a problem. So this really makes a difference to putting control in place and scaling possible. And so I've worked with companies that were already big and there was a problem there. Putting the foundation in really is what fixes it and gets you in the right track. This is really kind of where I would focus you on. People ask me, well, when's the right time to put systems in? And again, to annoy you with the same name, Ellen, my co-pilot, driving along, she says to me, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? And I said, Ellen, I'm from New York City. We don't know from trees, so why don't you just tell me? She goes, 10 years ago and today. Because if you don't plant today, 10 years from now, you're going to wish you had. And I had never heard that before, but it makes such total sense. So getting to the leadership thing here is, for people that, when I was doing one-to-one, it was typically 2 to 3 years we worked together to put these programs in to really stick. I didn't want to have like a rubber ball, throw it against the wall and come bouncing back. So got those systems in. And then the last program I did was leadership, where I would take them through the mental aspects and how they have to grow and, getting really good at goal setting and then reverse engineering it and all the things that it takes to do leadership. And everyone who went through with me said, I love this. Why didn't we start with this? I go, because when I showed up, you were in a swimming pool, splashing around and about to drown. That's not the time for me to teach you how to swim. My first job is to get you to the side of the pool and out. And then we can go back. So that's why there's no wrong time for leadership either. I think it's good for goal setting and the rest of it. But leadership really builds off of these 7 systems and really propels you to what's next. What are we going? What do we want to do? I got from Dan a thing called business meditation. And I said, what's business meditation? He goes, I want you to spend, no matter how late your day is, 15 minutes addressing these 3 questions. What business am I in? What business should I be exiting? And what business should I be going into? So at this time, I was in fuel oil only. And that, because I asked those 3 questions, I knew pretty soon. one of the things is one of my competitors, a big competitor, really good competitor, who I hated but really appreciated because they made me better.
Yeah.
They were getting into security alarm business, and we had already got into gas heating and air conditioning and plumbing, and then finally electrical. I said to my brothers, "Do you want the guy who just was in the attic working on the heating and cooling to now work on your security system? I don't think we should be doing that. Let's go find a friend of ours who doesn't want to be in our business and does security." So there was somebody like that. And I literally said the same thing to him. "Do you want to be in our business?" So we did a standstill agreement, which just means we don't go in your business, you don't go in ours. And then we went to market and said what I just said. "Do you want the guy who worked on your heating equipment to also do your security system?" Because it was cold at them. "You should really have an expert, and this is who we recommend." So that was a good way of thinking about what business am I in, what business should I be exiting, what business should I be moving into. But there are some businesses I didn't want to go into.
Yeah. No, that's the first time I've ever heard that before. The business meditation. I really like that. I'm going to use that. And I want to go back. I know we've been a long podcast already. This is the first time you've actually laid out your, the 7 power tools. Are they tools? Is that how you describe them? 7 power
Foundation.
Yeah. So I've got planning, operations, staffing, sales coaching, marketing, and finance. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. You want to take us through kind of what that means real quick and just, you don't have to,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it,
Yeah.
even
So
though it's a thin book.
planning and trying to keep it as short as it is. It's all about working on the right things at the right time at the right way. The 3 rights of planning. And so really all the great ideas that you get, and let's face it, you have way more ideas. I thought I had it bad when I had just seminars, webinars, and a few events. Now I go to social, Facebook, Instagram. There's no shortage of ideas out there. And the problem with that is, are you listening to an idiot or a genius? That's really hard. So having the 7 powers helps you filter some of that. So planning is really about every great idea goes to the top of the funnel, master project, works its way down to the top 30 by either fixing your biggest problem and challenge, greatest chance to grow and be profitable, and then down to that makes your top 30, which is if you and I, Josh, are working together, we have a list of 30. Next year at this time, I want to know how many of the 30 you got done. And then 30 is still too much to work on, so we use the same strainer again. Fix his biggest problem, challenge, greatest chance to grow and be profitable, gets down to our top 5. These are the top 5 that you choose. Guys used to ask me all the time, "Oh, could you pick them for me?" And I go, "Absolutely not." I said, "Can I just pick top 5?" And go, "Absolutely not. It has to work its way down." But sometime this week, you said these are the 5 things that are going to fix your biggest problem and challenge, greatest chance to grow profitable. So don't tell me you were busy working on some job or putting out some fire, because you'll be doing that forever if you don't dedicate a part of your week. And again, guess where the time block has to be? On your calendar.
Yeah.
So that you make sure that you are working on these. This is the path. Operating is really about org charts. Box org chart is one, depth chart, flow of communication, and then having the manuals that cover it. It's the only way to come under control and be systematic. Staffing is, again, about how to take willing apprentices with no skills to willing techs with great skills. Apprentice, junior tech, senior tech, field supervisor, and beyond. Sales is all about, big tech sales selling in a systematic way. Mine was 5 steps that they are trained on, 5 steps to follow. I think you can have a 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, 10-step. Anything more than 10, good luck getting anybody to follow with any consistency. Not going to happen. So sales, I taught techs how to sell. I taught big ticket people how to sell. They're the basic skills that you have to learn and the basic systems. The good news is if you get really good at sales, your marketing gets easier. Because if you can sell to one ideal customer or 10 or 100 or 1,000, then marketing becomes better because you already know what makes your target audience click and get it. So marketing is a marketing plan and writing which covers target audiences, where they live, what the demographics are, and then really also marketing budget, which is how much fuel you're putting in the gas tank. Marketing allocation is what three drivers away you're going to work. That doesn't mean it's the only three, but they're going to get the lion's share of your time, energy, and money. And the last thing that everyone misses is a marketing calendar. I'm busy, busy, busy. And all of a sudden the phones go dead and I pick it up to make sure, is it working? Because I have done that. You have to populate your calendar throughout the year actually backwards. So marketing is always happening. Sales coaching really goes to the core. Would any of us ever do homework as kids if our parents didn't check it periodically? The answer is no. So sales coaching is really a reward system and checking on sales performance. If they go above, there's something in it for them. If they hit the metric, keep coming, we love you. If they're underneath, we coach, but only for so long. And so financial really is about learning how to do what Ellen taught, which is how do you budget? How do you keep plugging your numbers back so that you are selling at the right price, creating the profit? And basically think of it this way. If you don't have the ingredients to bake your pie the right way, it's not going to come out in the end the way you desire. That's really what it is. So I think I hit them.
No, that's great. I appreciate you going through that. All right, I got 3 more questions for you if you're still good.
I'm here.
All right. All right, great. All right, cool. So next question is, I know you had mentioned Tommy Mello, which who's local to us, and now he's kind of exploded on social media. I know he's got a couple of books out, and he's been vocal about working with you, as well, and credits you to a lot of his success. So, because he puts that out, I'd like to hear kind of your side of it, of where he stood out. If there's people out there who are quote unquote fans of Tommy's and fans of yours, like, what did he do really well?
He is incredibly honest and genuine, and unfortunately, because he's a media star, people start reading stuff into it. He doesn't need to do any of it.
Yeah.
And he's doing it for all the right reasons. Having said that, 2017, I get a phone call because I'm going to be on his podcast. And I look down at the phone number and I go, "Hey, Tommy, where do you live?" He goes, "Phoenix." He goes, "Where do you live?" I go, "Scottsdale." He goes, "Great, we'll have lunch afterwards." So we meet for lunch and he hands me his book and he goes, "I really would love you to read it, but I want you to be brutally honest." I said, "Tommy, don't give it to me if you don't want brutally honest." And so I go home and I'm trying to read through the book, and then I just call him up and I go, "This is not a book. This is a ransom note. And if I tried to write my own book, 7 Power, which I did, I needed an editor, and you need my editor, Helene." Helena was the one they needed to get set up. That was his first book, The Home Service Millionaire.
Right.
Anyway, when I came in 2017 to his shop, because he hired me right there at lunch, he was $15 million in sales. So he knew how to make the phone ring, but he was losing money every day. And basically the company was on fire. So when the phone rang, it was gasoline to a fire. And none of this is secret. He tells it all the time. So my job was to get him to stop losing money. And then we started making a lot of money, and we were really rolling. And within very short time, he says to me, "Al, we're going to be 100 million. And I already knew Tommy, and I go, "I don't doubt it. But we have to stay systematic." Anyway, he's blown straight through that. I have 250, 300. I don't know where he's at right now, making great profit all across the country. And so, systems to him were really important. He was brilliant. He is still brilliant, but he would be chasing every shiny object. And so I told him one day, I said, "You are an avid reader, probably more than anyone I've worked with. But all these different voices in your head doesn't leave room for my voice. It's not my ego. You called me in here for a reason. Once this system's in place, you can talk to anybody, you can read anyway, but you'll have a better way to filter." And to his credit, that's pretty much it. Now, having said that, he was playing with his phone while I was there, because then he blamed everything on ADHD. And I go, "I'm glad you have a diagnosis. Most of us at my age used to look out the window because the teacher was boring. We probably would have been diagnosed the same." I said, "But put your blinders on. And he was playing with his phone. And finally I said, put your phone away or I'm leaving. And he was playing with the phone. And I just packed up my stuff and I go into the door. And he goes, where are you going? I told you I was leaving if you didn't put your phone away. There's a bucket right behind you. And to his credit, he shut it down and the rest is history.
Amazing. That's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question, second to last questions I've got is, what are you learning right now? I mean, I can tell by, just talking to you for the amount of time that we have that, like, you're somebody who you're a builder, right? And I have to assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have to assume that translates to building yourself too. So is there something that you're learning right now?
Yeah. My father told me this, if you think you're done learning, you're right, but not in a good way.
I like that.
So
it's good.
Yeah. I don't read as much as I once did. Part of that is I'm like all of you. I've become a skimmer in some ways. But a lot of it also is because I've been around so long is I realize a lot of it's recycled. And so I know the source of where it is. Having said that, one of the best places I learned is in Facebook groups or industry groups because I don't know who the currently best answering service, although best answering service, I would put air bunny quotes on that. And so, I still learn. I interact with people on social media a lot in groups. I'm not interested in all the other noise out there. I don't even follow my family members. I want to be in the industry groups. And if I hear a lot of people talking about it, then it causes me to research and write something about whether it's model trucks or how to build the right warehouse and all the things that I like to do. So it's kind of like a rotating puzzle in a good way.
Okay, very cool. All right, Al. So we went over a lot, and honestly, I could talk to you for 6 more hours if we had the time. I'm so grateful for your wisdom and everything you're imparting on me and our audience. Before we wrap up the show, I want to ask you, it's kind of our sign-off question. What's a truth, Al, that took you years to fully understand, but changed everything once you did?
So it happened late in my career, unfortunately, but when my team got really energized and that they knew that they now had a voice and they could get fingerprints on how things were going, and that I didn't have to be the guy that had all of the answers. It actually came up during the operating meetings where we were always stuck. The last guy out, who was done at 2 a.m., would leave a message with our people that were answering the phones, not a stranger. And I would get in the morning and look at this message and go, what? What did he say? And now I have to wake this guy up who just got to sleep and ask him a question about whatever it is. His name is Joe. And Joe goes, I tell you, and this is old, so understand. He says, have a dedicated line and a dedicated answering machine. I will say the following. Mrs. Smith, 123 Main Street. The third circulator needs to be replaced. I put a tag on it so you won't confuse it. She's expecting us between 9 and 11 a.m. Good night. And all of us just did a collective head slap because none of us had thought anything about this. And that was one of the enlightening moments, is that your team can help you lift. But it really, you need to structure the day-to-day. You need to get the 80% covered. You need to explain the problem in a way. And then with this top 5 that I talked about, you don't have to do it all yourself. Your owners, your managers, the right team members can come along and help you lift.
I appreciate that. Al, if people want to learn more about you or the 7 Power Contractor, or they want to find your book, where can they do that?
Best place to go is the number 7powercontractor.com. That's my website. I have a ton of blogs. You can search it. Been writing for years and years, and it's really pretty much stuff that's still foundational. There's also the products tab, which is the book, which is only sold through Amazon. There's Audible, there's paperback, there's an ebook, so whatever flavor you like. It's very short, and it's short for a reason, because I'm dyslexic, I'm a slow reader. I want you to read it over and over again, or listen to it over and over again, and then implement. There is the signature operating manual system, which is those org charts and manuals that I talk about, the big foundational piece. And once you've done that, there is a second program called Signature Staffing System. And that is where you can take these willing apprentices with no skills to willing techs with great skills.
Awesome. Well, Al, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. And like I said, for sharing everything that you did and being so transparent about it as well. I think that's really helpful I know it's helpful for me. I can't speak for my audience, but I'm sure it is helpful for them too. So thank you just 1,000 times for coming on the show.
I really have deep appreciation for you. And I have enormous empathy for all of you who are listening. Do something. Do the right thing. So get working the right thing, the right way at the right time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Al.